Hello, everyone. Hello to those that are with us right now, and hello to those who will join us later after this live stream is over. It is the Hidden Hour with Dr. John Babe. Dr. Babe. Is that it?
We're still working it out.
Yeah, he does not like that name.
No, I'm neutral.
Yeah. Well, we have big plans for the night. We've been talking about what we wanted to talk about, which is the fascination with true crime. But before we begin, yes, a lot of you were already talking about it before we got here. There is a lot of breaking news coming down. Justin Lum, if you don't follow him on Facebook, he is coming down with a lot. But hello, thank you. Thank you, Holly, so much. But the big news is that Gilbert police have filed. Sorry, I just lost my. Okay, so Gilbert police have submitted their case to Maricopa County regarding the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux, who is the ex-husband of Melanie Pulowski. This happened on 10/2/19, and they believe which and they're essentially saying that they plan to charge both Chad and Lori with attempted murder, first-degree murder, conspiring, and that Melanie Pulowski, they make a note at the bottom, and I thought this was really interesting. As of this supplement, charges are not being submitted against Melanie Lee Boudreaux Pulowski. I thought that was a really interesting thing to throw in there. Oh, and that then they also said that if Alex Cox were still alive, he would be facing those same charges. And so I wanted to just talk about this really briefly because it's just happening right now. And there's also body cam footage that John and I have still yet to watch. We saw that it just came down of the day that Brandon was shot at by who we believe is Alex Cox in the Jeep Wrangler. But what are your thoughts, John, Dr. Babe? What are your thoughts on Melanie even being mentioned? I mean, clearly they don't have enough to charge her. That's what I'm feeling. But the fact that they're mentioning her says something to me too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that Chad and Lori are the main suspects. Because it suggests they have evidence, or obviously they have enough evidence to not only charge them, but to make what they feel is a strong case against them. So it's not surprising that they would see Chad and Lori as sort of the masterminds behind all of this, right? That's something we've talked about for a long, long time. But
yeah.
But
you guys, we tried something new tonight, which is this boy convinced us that he would watch TV and he didn't need a babysitter.
Mama.
Okay, 1 second. So you keep talking, John. I'm going to mute this while I talk to our son. Okay, thanks. Go.
Babysitting situation with our son. Lauren was much more optimistic about the outcome than I was. So I was very much in favor of trying to find someone to watch him. And actually he's in my door now. So yeah. He's
this is my fault. Sorry.
I was prepared to bet Lauren that we were gonna.
Okay, so I'm gonna go take care of him. Will you explain your thoughts about Melanie Pulowski being on? You can do this. Okay. Hey, guess what? You're in trouble, and you're not gonna get any Sour Patch Kids because you're ruining my show. So if you don't sit on the couch and do this and not interrupt me, you'll do it. But if you keep coming back, you do not get Sour Patch Kids. What's wrong?
Okay. Hi guys. Sorry. I think Lauren accidentally muted my mic, so I think I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Wait, can you guys hear? Okay. So, can you guys hear me now? So,
Was John muted?
muted it, I think. Yes.
Okay.
So,
go ahead.
we're getting off to a rocky start here. I was gonna bet Lauren that I didn't think our son could make it more than 10 minutes, but it turned out to be like 2 minutes until he interrupted us. So my thoughts are that it's not surprising that Chad and Lori have a role in it, clearly, but and probably Chad has the main role, I would imagine, but it is somewhat surprising that they don't have enough evidence to implicate Melanie Pulowski in that plot, because I mean, to me, I think it's probably just a lack of evidence. I think they clearly think that she played a role, but
one thing that Jason Lum or Justin Lum, excuse me, rocky start. Yeah, I think what happened, babe, is I might have muted you instead of me, and I'm sorry. But one thing that and now I'm echoing, I hear. But one thing that Justin Lum just shared was that Brandon Boudreaux, he met. So this is something from a follow-up contact with Brandon. I met with Brandon Boudreaux. So this is the investigation, the police officers. I met with Brandon Boudreaux to take custody of a smartphone that contained correspondence between Brandon and Charles Vallow. The smartphone, Brandon believed Charles' correspondence was blocked from communicating with him. Brandon said the only other person who had access to the Samsung at the time was Melanie Boudreaux. Brandon went on to explain that he allowed his son, name redacted, to use the device to play games since July of 2019 and near the time of Charles Vallow's homicide. Brandon recently went through the Samsung for old photographs when he discovered 24 unread messages between Charles at these dates, and he said the messages were found in a folder titled something like AT&T blocked folder. Brandon said this was consistent with his phone forwarding Charles's calls directly to voicemail between these times. In other words, Brandon is suggesting that Melanie might have tampered with his phone. That's what I'm hearing. So it's interesting. There's some evidence out there, and what might be interesting too is, I guess it's possible she could be charged at a later date. She might not be charged, but if more evidence comes out, I think it would all depend on that. That's what it sounds like to me. They don't have enough yet, but maybe they will one day and maybe they won't.
And the fact that they mentioned her would suggest that she's still a suspect. They probably just don't have the evidence. But I mean, it's hard to imagine that she wasn't somehow involved, but I don't know what they have.
Right. As Colette Cox says, she has main character energy.
Right. Right. It's just, it makes logical sense that plot doesn't work very well without her in it. So, yeah.
Right. And let's remember, Dee Dee reminds us that Brandon did sue Melanie P's lawyers for defamation, and he won millions of dollars. So that happened too. Let's not forget that. So it's very interesting. So guys, apologies again for the rough start. Do you know what happened? Can I just share the story of what our child's issue was? We told our son, he was very committed to staying out by the TV because I bribed him and said that he could have some Sour Patch Kids if he did this. And I said, there are only two reasons you come and get us. If it's an emergency, an emergency is if you hurt yourself or if you spill something. Well, there's a giant bowl of popcorn all over our living room rug. So he spilled something very quickly. And so he was doing what he thought he was supposed to do, which was come and get us. And he was very upset when I kind of got mad at him. He said, "You told me." So
So yeah, so that's a 4-year-old's version of an emergency.
Yes. And I looked at him and I told him, thank you. We'll take care of it later. So we'll deal with that later. Anyway, yeah, Julie Holden said, 1, the house is on fire, or 2, you're bleeding. Or, if you spill the popcorn ball all over the living room rug. And then Debbie Day, I just want to say this too. She says she can't wait for Anna part 2. That is done. It is actually exporting on my computer right now. And I hope to post that either tonight or tomorrow night. So yeah, tonight I hope for our Patreon members, and then tomorrow night we'll do a public premiere. So that's coming. I'm excited for it too. It's good. I'll just say that. So for those who haven't listened to the Anna interview, part 1 is on our YouTube channel right now, and part 2 will be coming down tomorrow. And it is a fascinating inside look. I'll say that there is a lot more to be said in that interview. So, all right. With all that being said, we'll see what Justin Lum sends us soon all night. We're on edge. But moving on to something else. We missed a few of the Dateline questions, and we thought we would talk about that briefly. Just answer a couple more questions that came down that we thought were important. When we did our Dateline reaction live, we realized that we really do miss a lot of chats. Thank you, Angela. And we missed a lot of the questions, and there were some good ones. And I thought that John and I wanted to answer a couple of those. And then, like we said, get into a question. Would you say, John, this has been a question that's been asked of us from the very beginning? This is a question that so many people have asked us, and we've never really answered it until now, which is, why do people have a fascination with true crime? So, first off, the Dateline questions. Do you remember what they were, John? One of them was,
I think the biggest question we didn't get to was, did we get paid for our appearance on Dateline? And the answer is no, we didn't. And by the way, we didn't ask to get paid. We never brought the issue up. We never requested money for an appearance. I think we were just honored that they asked us to help tell their story and to be a part of something that we really value. So money was never an issue. It was never brought up. We never asked them to be paid, and they didn't pay us. So, but having said that, it was a great experience. We loved it. And, some things are more important than money, for sure.
Right. Other questions. Thank you, Megan Music. And thank you, Hazelnut, and everyone for your super chats. Another question that people asked us, they just really wanted to understand if Keith Morrison was, kind, or the similar way. Keith Morrison was so kind. He's a really humble guy, in my opinion. And he came across so friendly and so nice and so down to earth. And it was very easy to talk to him. Right. We were both nervous.
Yeah, right. It was, as I said on the other live that we did after the show, which was late. So we wanted to revisit this a little bit here, just because a lot of our listeners weren't able to join us so late, since we're on the West Coast. Dateline ended at 2 Eastern time. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people were unable to participate. So but yeah, it was it was surreal. Being across from Keith Morrison, and Lauren and I both have been Dateline fans for many years. Mine goes back to grad school when, Dateline this was in the 90s. Dateline was, I think, newly formed at that time. And I had an interest in forensic work. So, it was a fascinating show to me very early on. And Keith Morrison was always the main anchor in that show for many, many years. He was the only one who did it for many years. So it's like sitting across from someone you kind of know, or you feel like but then they're also a major celebrity, or at least somewhat of a celebrity. So
right.
So it was it was an amazing experience. And yes, he set me at ease, as much as he could. And he's a really good guy.
So I'll answer this question. Did Dr. John finally watch the episode? He has not, but there's always a but. But what Dr. John did watch was they did a highlight web report of hidden true crime on the NBC website. We also have that on our YouTube channel, where Keith is asking us about our podcast, Hidden True Crime. And you watched that, right, John?
I did watch it. Yes, I watched the trailer, but not the actual episode.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even a trailer. This had nothing to do with it was a web extra.
Oh, the web extra. Yeah, the web extra.
Right. And thank you, Donald, for what you said about Patreon. And so on that, you did see that they put in something you said about crime. And I thought maybe this is a great segue. You can talk about that and get into tonight's topic.
Yeah, so one of the questions Keith Morrison asked was, why crime? What's your interest in crime? And I said that there's a line I like to repeat probably too often for Lauren's tastes, but one of my favorite lines is that a better understanding of crime is a better understanding of ourselves. And that's how I see it. I think that crime asks so many questions of us as human beings, and it asks so many questions of the human condition in general. And those are questions we want to ask. So I think that's one of the reasons we started this podcast, by the way, is because we feel like a lot of the big questions around crime aren't being talked about out there. And, there's almost I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of people that are serious about crime, but I think most of them are kind of retelling the stories. And so we really wanted to take a stab at telling more than the story and kind of digging a little deeper. And I think so, hence the quote, I think that crime really says something about who we are and ourselves. And if we're willing to look deeply enough, I think we can learn a lot about ourselves from how we respond to crime and how we think about it and what appeals to us about it.
I want to read a message that we received after we were on Dateline, because this person, and I'll leave their name out, but this person, it came as a private message on Facebook. And this person shared something that I think a lot of us maybe sometimes feel. And so I thought, is that okay if I read this message? It says, "Dear John and Lauren, I just wanted to write and tell you how much I enjoyed listening to your podcast. I truly believe it's one of the best podcasts ever made. I've been hooked ever since I saw you on Dateline and have listened to every episode you have made since. Not because I am endlessly fascinated by the Chad and Lori story, but because I am about all the things you have to say about it. Being a true crime junkie is not something I am proud of. I've often seen it as a form of mind-numbing escapism of dubious nature. But your podcast has proven to be the exact opposite of that. I come away from binge listening to it not like a junkie so much as feeling edified and uplifted, as it has genuinely been educational and inspirational. Indeed, I have learned more about myself in such a short time. I could go on to suffice it to say for now, but thank you for your efforts and success in transforming the true crime genre into a more noble pursuit, in my mind at least. Wishing you the best." And then they signed their name. But I think I screenshot this because I think what's really important about it, and the question I would love for you to answer tonight, babe, and I think so many is they call themselves the true crime junkie, but it's not something they're proud about. I think a lot of times people don't understand why we all have a fascination with crime. And everyone here, we've become this community, and I've had a fascination with crime ever since been watching Rescue 911 in the 80s on TV. And I think that what you have done has helped us all realize that what we're trying to do is understand ourselves and humans. And so I just wanted to, yeah, really, I think maybe ask, should we be ashamed that we're true crime junkies, all of us? Or what does it mean about us? What does it mean?
Right. There's so many answers to the question, by the way. But I mean, if I go back to that quote that I told Keith Morrison about, it helps us understand ourselves better. I think that's kind of the key. And I really appreciate that quote, because I don't think it's something to be ashamed of. Obviously, it's something I've done for my career. So, I mean, in fact, I can tell a story about, Lauren would laugh at this, about how, like every 5 years, give or take, I kind of, one thing I will say is it can be very difficult working with criminals all the time. Definitely. So there is a challenge with, working with people that are very dysfunctional and have some severe problems. And some of the decisions I make are kind of life and death decisions. So, that's difficult. That takes a toll. But my story is that every 5 or 6 years, I kind of venture into new terrain a little bit, just to expand my knowledge base and to do some different things. And I've always continued to do forensic work. That's been the foundation of everything I've done. But 5 or 6 years ago, I got involved in sports psychology a little bit, and I started doing some work with athletes. And one of the things in sports psychology, one of the main tenets of sports psychology is that you have athletes work on what's called self-talk. So self-talk is kind of a way to get people, or athletes in particular, to kind of enhance their performance by building themselves up to some degree. So they'll say things like, I can do this, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, whatever. Really positive type things, because you wouldn't want an athlete to go into a performance. Imagine an Olympic athlete like Shaun White or something going into a performance saying, I'm horrible, I'll never do this. Right. That's the antithesis of what a sports psychologist is trying to do, because you want an excellent performance. So, but I mean, there's like this, for me, it was interesting and I enjoyed it. But for me, there's almost kind of this Pollyannish perception, that when you're used to dealing with people that kill other people, and then you're kind of around these people that are constantly like patting each other on the back and talking about how great they are and how there's no limits. So that was another thing in sports psychology that drove me crazy, was there's like this perception that, that performance is unlimited, right? Like you can run a 2-second mile if you want. I mean, and that's just not true. There's limitations to everything, right? So, I didn't last too long in the sports psychology arena. I learned a lot. It was interesting. I can now speak the language of sports psychology. I have a lot of respect for sports psychologists, by the way. But for me, it was just a little too, unrealistic in terms of looking at the bigger picture of what human beings do and who they are. And truthfully, I felt like the athletes I helped the most were the ones who were willing to one thing I learned is that the athletes who kind of looked at their demons and dealt with their demons improved their performance the most. So, but that's not really a part of the sports psychology world that, I mean, if you think of somebody like Tiger Woods, right? Like Tiger Woods, phenomenal athlete, like, arguably the best golfer of all time. Right. And, golf is obviously a very mental game. And so, but Tiger Woods had a lot of demons, and you have to wonder, like, if somebody like Tiger Woods was willing to kind of dig deep and face those demons, how many majors titles would he have won? Could he have been different? It's a fascinating question to me. And that, by the way, that starts crossing over into the crime right? That starts crossing over into the crime arena, right? So, so again, like I think crime really holds up a mirror to a lot of us, and it really has some important lessons that we can learn from it. And I wonder about like somebody like Tiger Woods. I mean, just as I said, just a natural, incredibly gifted athlete, but clearly somebody with some demons, and somebody that kind of lived on the surface of things. I think. I mean, I've never met Tiger Woods. I don't know for sure, but anyway, I went back to forensic work full time pretty quickly because I missed dealing with the fact that forensic work is real, and it's real life, and it's nothing is sugar coated. Whatever problems or issues people have, they're out there, they're up front. There's no positive self-talk, there's no fantasies about things being unlimited. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't strive for that, by the way. Like if you want to break some records or enhance your performance, please go do that. But somebody like Chad Daybell thinks that there's no limitations on anything, right? He's a prophet, and so there's limits on everything, and whether we acknowledge that or not, that's the reality.
Yeah. It's been a very interesting string of comments as you've been talking. People kind of sharing their gateway case to true crime, saying they care about the victims and want to understand the victims. Other people want to understand why humans do what they do. Some people are sharing. They're sharing a lot of interesting things. I know a lot of people have shared with us that they were victims. Many times, once someone becomes a victim, that becomes sort of their, they become really enveloped into the true crime world, which you've said makes a lot of sense, right, John, as far as if someone becomes a victim of a crime?
Yeah, I think that's certainly one motivation I think that people can have is to relate to victims and to want to help victims. And certainly people that have been directly or indirectly the victims of crime, that's something that can last for generations. And families have to deal with that. They have to deal with the pain of it. But I would say, I would look beyond that and say, it's not just being a victim. It's more, it's being a victim is if, and again, this is me kind of taking a step beyond the obvious here, but it's not the appeal of victims per se, I think, that matters. It's what it means to be a victim. And by that I mean victimization is usually some state of affairs where your view of the world has changed. So typically the victims I've worked with, before they're victims, they sort of have this orderly and kind of nice view of the world, and then this random event happens and they become victims and everything falls apart. Now they see the world as chaotic and unpredictable. So it's more kind of change. It's victimization means that your worldview has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It means that you're going from kind of this orderly, predictable view of the world to some degree to a worldview that's different, that's shattered, that all your assumptions are upended. So I think that's the deeper issue with victimization. And I think maybe, and this would be true of me, I think that part of working with victims is attempting in some ways to repair that damage. Right? It's creating some sense again that the world can be orderly and the world can be predictable again. It may never be the same. It probably won't be the same ever again, but there's definitely, I think, an attempt to create or have some sense of normalcy return to a victim.
Okay. Interesting. I always say if and when John has a TED Talk, it needs to be about why our fascination with true crime is a good thing. I think that would be something that would just be brilliant. So thank you for letting us finally ask you all these questions and helping all of us understand.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a talk that's called "What True Crime Teaches Us About the Human Condition." So there you go. It's
There you go.
it teaches us a lot about the human condition. And so again, getting back to the quote you read, I think that's noble. I don't know, I'm sorry that the person feels ashamed of diving into crime or getting involved in crime because I just don't you know I don't think it should be associated with shame. I think if we really look at crime and what's going on, I think it's incredibly worthwhile and noble. So I'm glad. I hope we changed that person's point of view, or at least got them to think about it. So um, that's kind of an unintended consequence maybe of our podcast.
Right. Thank you, Carrie and Michelle, for your great comment that true crime reminds us of our vulnerability in every way as victims and as perpetrators. Sitting with that vulnerability gives us strength. And to those that have sent their super chats and their questions, thank you so much. I'm trying to not interrupt too much, but we have seen them and we are very grateful and honored to have such wonderful listeners and people who value the conversations that we have at our dinner table or in our separate rooms while our 4-year-old watches TV. But that brings me to another question, Babe, which is, I think one thing I've heard a lot is, as I've been talking to women, I think you're rare. You're a unicorn. You're a man who is open with his interest in true crime. I mean, clearly you're a psychologist, so you're very open with it, a forensic psychologist. But I've talked to women sometimes when they say my husband doesn't understand and he actually doesn't want me to be into this because they don't understand. They think it's unhealthy, or why are you obsessed with this kind of dark side of humanity? And I've talked to a couple women too where they're like, I just don't want my, husband or significant other to know I'm even talking to you. There's this kind of disconnect. So I guess I have two questions. The first one is, why is it mostly women? Because it is mostly women interested in true crime.
Yeah, that's that's right. That's a subset of the question we're asking. Yeah, I don't. There's yeah, that's there's no easy answer to that, but I mean,
people are saying they can't see me clearly. I'm clear to you,
yeah,
right, John?
You're kind of blurred. I don't know.
Really?
Something
I'm
on your
clear on my end. I'm clear, so I don't know what it would be.
You're blurred to me. Is your camera? Is there something obstructing your camera?
I don't know. Sorry, you keep talking, and I'll work on that. Now that I know it's an issue, I'll work on that while you talk.
Yeah, there's something. You're definitely blurred. I don't know how to control the focus on this application.
I'll work on it.
But okay,
I'll work on it.
Well, so yeah, that's a tough question about why more women are interested. I think the probably to me the most obvious answer is something we just talked about with victims. To put it bluntly, I think women have more victim empathy. So I think, and women have more empathy in general than men. So I think crime appeals to women because they're much more able to kind of feel the sorrow and grief and pain that the victims go through. Men tend to be less empathic, and I can tell you from someone who's worked with hundreds of male criminals, and yes, I have worked with female criminals too, not as much, way less, but almost every male criminal that I've assessed definitely has deficiencies in empathy. So it's just, dealing with emotions and empathy in general, I mean, specifically for men, is more difficult. So I think crime, if we talk about crime as kind of a mirror that forces us to reflect on ourselves, I think men are much less likely to want to look at that mirror and to kind of want to dig deeper into sorrow and grief and pain and loss and victimization, and men in general. And again, I'm stereotyping here, but men want to be seen as stronger and in control of situations, and they don't want to be seen as victims. They don't want to be seen as losing control in general. So I think those are definitely some of the reasons I think women are more attracted to crime initially.
Thank you. And that's not all men either, right? You're not.
Yeah, no, we have, we, in fact, we received a letter from an officer in law enforcement, and it was really touching. And he's quite, and we'll read this. We hope to read this. We'll read this eventually, but
right.
But he's an example of someone who is very high up in his organization, and he mentioned that he listened to one of our podcasts and he spent the entire day in tears. So it's not that men aren't capable of it; they certainly are, but I think they just don't want to deal with it as much, or they don't want that mirror held up as much. It's probably more difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. And some other people had shared that Tad Audie shared that she also felt women were more maybe tribal, were more socially aware. I thought that was interesting.
And somebody mentioned that women are more likely to be victims, that's also true.
Right.
Right. There's that's very true. That there's, well, yes, there you go.
Right. And then as Ozzy, and as Ozzy Todd says before anyone says it, not all men.
Yeah. Right. I don't,
Clearly, we have a man here discussing it with us. So, right. But yes, exactly.
Thank you. Yeah. I get into trouble. I sometimes get into trouble when I make these types of statements, because people point out that, I as I tell Lauren often, I deal in probabilities. So nothing is absolute in my world. Everything is on a continuum of probability, and my job is to make assessments of probability. So if I assess someone as being a high risk, oftentimes there's a probability associated with that. In other words, if this person's released into the community, there might be like a 70% chance that they're going to reoffend in some way. But that also means there's a 30% chance they won't. So clearly I'm making generalizations, and one thing I want to say that I tend to be kind of a philosopher at heart, and philosophers sometimes make sweeping statements that can be disputed, and they're not absolutes. And so yes, right, there's plenty of men that are interested in crime, and I don't want to portray all men as being insensitive and lacking empathy, because that's not true either.
Right. I think also, and this is not about men or women, but I think people that are interested in true crime, because I have girlfriends that don't want to listen. I have my own mother that refuses to watch our YouTube videos because she just does not want to handle, she just doesn't want to hear about crime. And I think there's also maybe a realist component to it too, or the idea that if we stay in our bubble, the dark part of humanity can affect us. I think there's a little bit of denial, maybe too. Those that understand crime learn over and over again that there are no social, social boundaries or wealth boundaries, that it affects crime, affects, can affect most families. We have a visitor. It knows no certain area, and I think people want to avoid that, is what I was going to say. He wants a snack. So, do you know what I'm trying to say? Am I saying it okay?
I think you can't look at crime without confronting some type of pain. Right. I think that's maybe what you're trying to say, is that He's knocking on my door.
He wants a snack.
Yeah, he wants a snack.
What I was gonna go ahead. What I'm trying to say. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
It doesn't discriminate. Here we go. Cheryl, she says it doesn't discriminate. And I think Cheryl said it well. And I think that what some people want to imagine that are into it is that it does discriminate and that if they avoid it, they're better than crime. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, right. Hey.
He's in with me. Just turned off my light. So
okay.
Hey, Banks. Hold on.
So yeah. So lesson learned with our son. I'm just reading some of the comments. Right. Women are over 80% of the victims in domestic violence cases. 10% are male. Yeah, I mean, women are much more likely to be the victims of violent crime, for sure. So, I'm losing my momentum here without Lauren, but I think when we're on this topic, I think there's another side to that too, and that is that sometimes crime can be a distraction from some of our most destructive impulses. In other words, it's almost a type of projection that instead of dealing with our own issues and our own sort of darker side and destructive impulses, it's much easier to see those issues in other people, right? So you just missed my little I was saying that, and sometimes I think crime can be an avoidance of certain darker parts of ourselves.
That's true too. Right. So what are you saying about me? So Carrie Michelle's asking a great question. Someone said this though. I think this is a great one to bring up too, that we've talked about. What about terror management theory? Is this an outlet for our own death anxiety? I think that's a great question.
Yes. And in fact, that's a great question, Lindsay. The terror management theory. So terror management theory predicts that when we have reminders of mortality, we actually try to escape from those, that we become more entrenched in our worldviews, and we tend to kind of escape into self-esteem, or we look for ways to bolster our self-esteem so we don't have to worry about it. And in a way, crime does the opposite of that, because crime puts your mortality up front and center, right? It forces you to deal with that issue. So I think in that sense, it's interesting because that requires a certain level of mental health. That requires healthier people to let me put it a different way. Crime forces our hand in terms of dealing with our mortality. If you're healthy, you're going to be able to deal with it in a better way. If you're not healthy, true crime is probably not the place for you to be. And I mean, I definitely don't want to get into this too much, but Lauren and I came into this so naive and thinking that, that we would be embraced by the entire true crime community and things would be great and we'd have all these collaborations. And, that has not been true. So I think what you see in the true crime community is, you see a lot of reactions to dealing with these very difficult issues that have to do with mortality and pain and grief, and healthy people deal with those well, and or people that are willing to really look at themselves and dig deeper into those areas. If you're willing to look at your mortality clearly, I think true crime is an arena that can really help people. If you want to run from that, it's probably going to create problems.
Yeah, no, and I do want to kind of delve into that a little bit more. As you said, you don't want to, but one thing that we have learned in the true crime community is there are a lot of very wonderful, intelligent, thoughtful people. All of you, this community is just incredible. And there are a lot of people, there are some really unhealthy people in the true crime community too, who suffer with mental health. We all suffer with mental health, but people that are struggling, deeply. And so it attracts a wide variety of people. And so what you're saying is that kind of what you're saying, and why that is the way it is?
I'm saying that dealing with crime for people that want to learn about themselves and that are open to dealing with the deeper issues that it brings up is going to be beneficial to those people. However, to those people, that may not be as healthy and that don't want to deal with their issues, and again, this isn't just crime. I've dealt with and trained many, many mental health professionals who would rather tell their clients to change than look at their own issues. So, this isn't just true of crime. It's, as a supervisor of many therapists over the years, this is something I've had to deal with a lot in terms of training therapists, is that many therapists get into the mental health profession for the wrong reasons. And that is because they have some deep-seated issues they don't want to look at. So they'd rather project those or put those on other people so that they don't have to deal with them. And I think crime is similar. But crime in a way is I happen to have, as a therapist, I happen to have worked with victims. So I've dealt with crime throughout my career in terms of, for me, there's never been any escape from it. But, crime forces us as human beings to really confront the larger questions of what it means to be human. And whether you like it or not, those questions are going to linger out there. So I think it's, to me, it's really fascinating to have conversations with people about what draws them to true crime and why. And I think somebody asked a question about my kind of true crime origin story, which
they did. I'll find it. You go ahead. It was Karen Michelle.
Yeah, Karen Michelle. Thank you. So I'm going to be a little evasive here, but Lauren and I are working on several of our episodes. We have some podcasts coming out soon, hopefully. And in the last of those episodes, I'm going to really dig deep into that and reveal kind of what's been hidden for me. So, and I think that's important. It's something I've really gone back and forth on about how transparent I want to be. But in our final episode, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about my origin story. And my origin story with true crime actually begins with trauma when I was very young. So, and it has to do with mortality salience in terms of, I think, my attraction to crime. And I'll give more details in our podcast, but it has to do with a trauma that probably should have killed me. I probably should have been dead when I was 4 years old. I survived it, and I think I don't know if obsessed is the right term, but I've been concerned about my mortality and mortality in general since I was a little kid. And I think crime, again, like this is why crime really appeals to me, because it forces me to deal with these issues head on. I can't escape from them. But yes, it has a lot to do with death for me personally.
Thank you, babe, for sharing that. Yeah. What else? Is there anything else you want to talk about tonight, or
What time is it? So, are you following? The questions are going quickly, but it looks like there's some good ones. Any?
There are some good ones, and I will be honest, I missed a couple of super chat questions. I apologize, but the chat went so fast, and I'm going back to look. And there have been so many generous people too with super chat tonight. We just thank you so much. We're sorry we haven't been able to get to all of them, but there were a lot of interesting questions. What would you? Liz Soden just got here, so she wants us to keep going.
Okay.
A lot of people are asking questions about this case. Someone asked earlier your thoughts about this case. Do you think that the case we're covering, the Daybell case, which is the case we chose, will go down in history as something that people study, or they commented it? They commented on the JonBenet Ramsey case as something like that, which are two very different cases, but I guess both have the murder of a child. But
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, it's hard to know how history will judge this case. I think for us, there's so many components. It gets into filicide, and it gets into the psychology of belief. And, because we're talking about people that believe in portals and zombies, it gets into cult-like behavior. It gets into persuasion. There's, I think one of the things that's so interesting about the Daybell case is all the moving parts. There's so many moving parts. And from a psychological standpoint, I think that's what makes it fascinating. If you take somebody like Israel Keys, though, it's quite different in terms of, you're talking about probably, a stone cold psychopath that maliciously murders people in a very planned manner, a very, intentional manner. And I think a case like that raises all kinds of questions about the nature of evil, what evil is, whether it is, right. It asks different questions. I mean, I think all crimes kind of ask that question in one way, but some of them scream out for an answer to that question. I don't know. The Daybell case is interesting in the sense that it doesn't quite have the force of like an Israel Keys. Like an Israel Keys kind of raises the question about, how do you create somebody like that? How do you create like a pure predator? Chad Daybell, whatever else we think of Chad Daybell, I don't think he certainly doesn't have those elements in his childhood or adolescence. Whereas a guy like Israel Keys is starting to develop those things pretty young. So, every crime raises different philosophical issues, and I think that's what makes it really fascinating. And the Daybell case raises many, many interesting issues that I think have application to all of us, like especially the belief thing, the belief component. How does somebody believe in zombies, right? Like, and then not only believe in them, but believe in them enough to murder someone for being a zombie. There's something really, bizarre and peculiar and inexplicable about that.
Right. Colette Cox said this case is like 6 cases in one.
Right.
I kind of agree with her. I mean, you've other cases have come and gone, and it hasn't been hard for me to continue with this case, if that makes sense. It's not like, oh, we chose this case, so we're stuck with it and we need to keep going. Because I got that question once. They're like, are you so tired of this? No, I keep coming back to it. I'll get invested in another case and I keep coming back to this because I feel like what Colette said is true, which is it's so many. It's cults. It's it's a mother murdering her, filicide. It's affairs. Right? You take as I said on Dateline, love, money, revenge, sex, and but why? And it has everything plus cults. It's just continuous.
Just as another contrast, I think of like the Chris Watts case where, he murders his entire family. I mean, yes, he has a mistress, but for the most part, Chris Watts seemed to be kind of an all-American guy. Like he was pretty normal throughout most of his life, and yet he committed the most heinous crimes imaginable, right? Like how does someone transform like that?
Right.
You know, is Chris Watts a psychopath, or is he like a normal guy that goes bad, right? Does he break bad? I don't, that, and why? So I think a lot of crimes have different components and they raise different philosophical issues. And I think that's definitely one reason we're interested in this genre, is that there's so many questions to be answered, and they all really ask us to look at different components of crime and to look at the larger implications.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's anything else. I think I'm good. I tried to put a link to the Dateline, NBC Dateline. People asked, and I'm uncertain if the link was too long or not, but Dateline has it. If you go to the Dateline's website or NBC website and you Google the Doomsday Files, you will find the Dateline. Thank you to those who have said such wonderful things about being proud of us that we were on Dateline. We appreciate it. We felt so proud that you guys were cheering us on. So thank you, Ashley T, saying that she was so flippin' proud to see us on Dateline. Keep it up. And to the people that said that our message to Tylee was beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, she's heartbreaking. Tylee is such a heartbreaking victims. And Hazelnut, thank you for what you just said about Banks. He's been seriously so good. And I agree. I actually hurt his feelings when I went out there. I kind of got upset at him, and I think he felt it was unjust, because I think he is doing pretty good for a 4-year-old. So I will take what you said, Hazel, and make sure he gets his Sour Patch Kids tonight. He did a good job. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to share, babe? Or do you want me to share about some others tomorrow night and some things?
I just want to say that I think, this conversation about what draws us to crime and why and what are our motivations, I think this is a conversation I want to have with our community for a long time, because I think it's really important. And I hope our listeners and viewers don't feel ashamed of that, that, like in the email you read, that I think this is a good conversation to have. And I think it's a conversation where we can help each other learn about ourselves. So thank you guys for joining us in these types of conversations, and let's keep it going. Let's continue to learn from each other and to dig deep into these crimes and to really figure out what's going on, both in terms of the crime and in terms of ourselves.
Yes. And let your friends know about Hidden True Crime as well. It means a lot to us. And here's what's planned for the rest of the week. Tomorrow night, it'll be late tonight for those that are on Patreon, but tomorrow night, we're going to premiere Anna Part 2. So for those that haven't watched Anna Part 1, her interview, it's on our YouTube channel. Look for Anna Part 1, the interview. And then tomorrow night we'll premiere, and I'll watch Part 2 together. And then Friday night, thank you, Robin, for your super chat. Tomorrow night, we will be, or not tomorrow night, that's tomorrow night, Anna Part 2. Friday night, we have something very special planned. I haven't put the link up yet. I think I'm going to plan to do that tomorrow. But Lori Hellis, retired criminal attorney Lori Hellis, we've planned a panel of Friendsgiving. There's been so many wonderful people in this community. John's not invited because you'll be babysitting.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, you'll be parenting. He hates it when I say that he'll be babysitting. We both babysit. We both parent. He'll be parenting. Sorry, John. He'll be parenting.
No philosophical questions allowed. Just fun.
Just fun. And we all say, not any of us can just call up a friend and talk about the Daybell case, no matter how much we love our friends. There are only certain people you can do that with. I cannot call my best friend from childhood and say, let's talk Lori Daybell. I've tried. It's never going to work. So we have this wonderful community on Friday nights where we have beverages of choice, and we wanted to celebrate. We've been sending recipes. Yes, Del Pace, there are recipes that are being sent to Lori Hellis. Her email is info. Oh dear. Colette, does anybody know that? I'm going to get her email wrong. But so I'll go back to that. But we're collecting recipes. We're going to do a recipe exchange. Don't worry, I don't cook. I'll have some Trader Joe's microwavable dishes I really like. We're going to have the loin fire cocktail recipe. So there's a little teaser. It's going to be a pajama party because why not? And I have a really fun panel planned. So far, there are 5 wonderful true crime community members that are set for Friday night's panel, including Trisha with Web Sleuth, and a few others. So that's Friday night, and that'll be something. So tomorrow night we have Anna part 2, and then Friday night we have our Friendsgiving Daybell pajama party hour or 2. Bring your favorite drink and questions for a panel of very smart women.
Brittany said, "Show me the funeral potatoes." Are you gonna?
Yes, we'll do.
Are there going to be some recipes for the funeral potatoes?
We've received quite a few recipes for funeral potatoes. Someone said, "Come on, Lauren, I know you don't cook, but it's like hash browns, cream of mushroom soup, and cornflakes. You can do this." I'm like, maybe I'll figure it out. It never tastes as good. You know what my issue too is? It never tastes as good as when I make it. So, but I'll give it a whirl. And then Stephanie and others have posted Lori Hellis's email. It's info@thelorivallostory.com. She's collecting your favorite recipes, even favorite drink recipes, favorite everything. And so that is Friday night. And Liz Soden Johnson says, why does it have to be her anniversary? I don't know. That is terrible. But for those that miss it live and have plans Friday, of course you can come watch it the next morning and we'll be there for you. So that's so the next 2 nights, Hidden True Crime. Now, let's go get Banks the Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah, right. Let's give them some positive feedback and reinforcement.
Right.
Even though we're gonna walk into, we may stumble on the popcorn. Hopefully, we won't harm ourselves in that process. But
I'm gonna warn you, it is pretty bad. We have a bit of us.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay.
All over the Persian rug, my parents' Persian rug. So, oh well.
As I said earlier, sometimes working in or being around true crime and thinking about true crime all the time means you have to live in a certain amount of chaos. So that's what we're going to do in a few minutes.
Right. Exactly. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Sorry about those technical difficulties.
Thank you, guys.
At the beginning. Thank you.
We're really grateful for all the support. You guys are fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.